on this. Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Shanti 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 Om. Namaste. Welcome. We begin today from the self. Okay, so we have looked into the ego, the mind, the intellect, and so on. And now we come to, we were doing the discrimination between the self and the gunas. Yeah? And we came all the way down to the self now, after having looked into the mind and the sense organs and so on. So now, as we know, when we come to the self, we don't have that much to say about the self, except that it's one without a second, it's actionless, and it is nirvikara. Nirvikara is the name I was trying to remember last week. It does not modify, it does not change. So it's a partless whole, meaning to say, although it appears as a variety of configurations of names and colors and forms, it's non-dual, it's one without a second and without any parts. So we have a few things that we can explore, not as qualities or properties of the self, because if the self would have properties and qualities, the self would be having something that define it by its properties and qualities, and then the self would not be non-dual, one with nothing other than itself, no inclusions even. Okay, so the only funny, interesting, mysterious inclusion that is not real inclusion or remains a little bit like unclear is Mr. Maya, the power of Maya, that does not belong to the self, because the self is one without any inclusion. But it's not apart from the self, but it's so closely intimate with the self that it appears to be integral part of the self, but it's not. It is Mithya. Maya is the beginning of Mithya, we could put it that way. Okay, so we have the self, and then we have Maya, Ishwara, Jiva, Jagat, and the whole shebang comes out of this Maya Shakti, as we know. So the relationship between Maya and Ishwara is something difficult to be understood intellectually. But since we know that nothing comes from nothing, and since we know that consciousness does not do anything because it is a karta and it can be verified in our own human experience, we can note that our consciousness does not change. We can observe that the intellect and the mind does change and everything else. But consciousness does not do anything, does not change, does not do anything. It remains just absolutely the same through all times. So we know that consciousness cannot have brought about this world of names, colors, and forms. Because it does not do anything. Our existence, our consciousness is absolutely apart. And then we need to understand that nothing comes from nothing, although there are a lot of schools of thoughts that says that, they try to have an idea of consciousness, some of them, but they say there is consciousness and then there is matter. Therefore, duality is reality. Consciousness is reality, but matter is reality. And matter brings about this universe because it's self-contained with a certain intelligence that allows it to create. So it means to say that matter is self-creating because it's self-generated. It brings about the world on its own. And that would make the world of matter energy as real as consciousness. And then it would again bring us to this duality as reality. But as we know, we have the world. The world is made out of matter / energy, and matter and energy are inert energies or matter. So it's not conscious on its own. Especially we see the world of objects. We can see that there is not even a rudimentary consciousness reflected in a stone. So we see it in an insect, but not on a stone. So we don't see that sentience, that intelligence, reflect or manifest in a stone, for example. But we see the existence. So we know that matter cannot generate conscious beings because matter is insentient. So, and then we understand that there must be something that is self-contained with consciousness, which is the other name, the other side of existence. There is a principle that is conscious existence itself of non-dual nature that is responsible to lend conscious existence to matter. So therefore, matter is going to dance with conscious existence by the grace of conscious existence itself. So having said that, the world of matter being fundamentally dependent on consciousness, yet is not projected by consciousness because consciousness has nothing to project anything, to do anything. It does not do anything. It does not have the energy, vikshipa, that allows a projection to take place. It does not even have sattva to begin dreaming about a projection, and much less tamas to grossify and manifest a concept in consciousness. So we have this situation that consciousness is not doing anything. And then we have the world. We know that the world cannot come from nothing. And at the same time, we know that consciousness does not project the world. And then we infer that there is something responsible for projecting the world of matter energy and with all these different configurations. So therefore, they believe that we Vedantins, we are the, how do they call us? Maya Vadas or something like that. The people who bring about this notion that there is such a thing as Maya. So the Maya Vadas, the people who believe in Maya as the cause of the projection of the universe. So why we are looking into that? Because when we go into talking about the self, we have to understand that there is not much to be said because it does not have any property or quality that allows us to say the self is like this and like that, okay? But having no qualities, properties, and attributes, it does not stop us to say something about the self, because when we talk about the self, we talk about its nature. The nature of the self is something that can be said and which does not depend on any inclusion of something else to characterize the self. You understand? So we don't need to have any energies or anything other than this clear, pure self that allows us to say what is the nature of the self, because the nature is the base of something, the foundation of something, is that which is the the last, how can I say that? It is the most fundamental aspect of something, is the nature of something, is the most fundamental aspect of something. So what is the most fundamental aspect of something? It's its nature. So when we talk about the self, we talk about its nature. Yeah? And we know it's fundamentally it's consciousness, knowledge. Yeah? It's the knowledge that allows Ishwara to be all-knowing. It's the knowledge that allows the individual jivas to enjoy a certain level of knowingness or intelligence, to begin try to make some sense out of this human experience, for example. So we know that it is consciousness, knowledge, intelligence, manifest as human intelligence. And we know that it is the existence which lends existence to any name and colors and forms, any configuration, any object has its existence, and based on the non-dual existence of Satchitananda, of Brahman. So we say that it is knowledge, consciousness, and pure intelligence, supreme intelligence, and then its existence that manifests as different names and forms. And it's also ananta, meaning to say it is by nature, by its very nature, is one without a second, meaning to say there is nothing beyond or other than consciousness. Therefore, there is nowhere, there is no border or there is no, how you say, boundary over which I end and then something else begins. So if there is no boundary that limits my infinite existence, and then it means that I am ananta, meaning to say I have no limitations because I am one without a second. So these are the very nature of consciousness. And then we can dig in a little bit more, looking for other aspects of consciousness, which we say aspects of consciousness, features of consciousness, which we can see is that which reveals, illumines and reveals. And then we bring in those analogies of the light, the sunlight that illumines and reveals. So by the power of consciousness, Satchitananda Brahman, by the power of pure knowledge, it illumines and reveals objects within this secondary order called mithya, this apparent order called mithya. Consciousness, this knowingness aspect of consciousness is going to reveal the world to whom? To all jivas. So this is another feature or aspect of consciousness. And then we say that another feature of consciousness is all pervasiveness. All pervasiveness is a beautiful one. And then we bring those metaphors of space. Space is highly pervasive because it's most subtle of all elements. And then it pervades everything. It permeates, it penetrates and pervades everything, just like space, but with a difference that it pervades the space itself. The space can be resolved in consciousness. Everything is resolved in consciousness. Consciousness can never be resolved into anything else. It's unresolvable consciousness. So we can look into so many different features of the self, that which pervades everything. And then we can also say that like space, it accommodates everything. without ever being touched by the objects it accommodates. So space has that feature as well. It accommodates everything without ever being touched or affected by anything it accommodates. So you will see this in China, that they have buildings going up everywhere. They make these new cities all over the place for millions of people in all this build. So this space before was really there, having a good time, having all the fresh air at its disposal. And then comes all these high buildings. So this space has no complaints, because it's going to pervade all those buildings, and not only all those creatures that are going to be living in those buildings is being pervaded by space. So likewise, we have different features of the self that we're going to explore in this chapter. But positively speaking, there is not much we can talk about the features and the nature of the self. So it's a short paragraph. The verse 21, before all this was created, there was only non-dual being, alone, one without a second. There was neither name nor form. This is a quote from Chandogya Upanishad. So before the universe was projected or manifest, there was only non-dual consciousness, existence. Beingness is usually referred to the existing aspect of Brahman. Before all of this, there was only existence without what? Without any configuration or names and forms superimposed on consciousness. It was non-dual consciousness, existence, and it was alone, one without a second. There was no names and no forms and no colors. It is a fact that you cannot get something out of nothing. Therefore, there was something prior to the appearance of objects. Before you have a pot, there must be clay. So the creation was there, but it was not in a particular form. It was potential as indifferentiated formulas, non-dual consciousness or non-dual clay, let's say, in the analogy. So as we know, the universe exists in its potential formulas, indifferentiate condition. And how do I know that? Because nothing can be coming from nothing. Right? And nothing comes directly from existence consciousness. Right? Because existence consciousness cannot never produce something like the universe, like the creation. So before the creation, there was only consciousness. And then out of the blue, we have the appearance of all objects. So before, there was something prior to the object, because a lot of people believe that before there was nothingness, there was emptiness. And then out of emptiness, the world is manifest. But as we know, there is no such a thing as nothingness. There is something as existence, or in other words, the fullness of Satchitananda, the fullness of Brahman, the fullness of existence, because existence remains always, right? The same way space remains always, regardless of having objects to accommodate or no objects to accommodate. Space remains always. the absence of objects within space does not disprove the presence of space itself. Right? So before the creation, before the manifestation, there was something that is a little bit similar to space, but it's something subtler than space because it's the most subtle. Space is a manifestation produced by Maya, which depends on this consciousness, which is the space of the space, so, quote unquote. So before there was this space of the space, and then Maya comes into play, and then there is the three energies, and then there is Ishwara, Jiva, and the universe, okay? So it does not come from nothing, it comes from where? It comes from its seed, its potential, in differentiate formulas, consciousness, okay? It comes from consciousness through the power of Maya. There were no objects, there were no experience, and there was no time. So time and space is a byproduct of the elements. The elements, when they come into creation, and then they grossify, and then we have objects, and then we have the sense, the feeling, the notion, the experience of space and time. So before that, there was no sense of experience and no sense of time. Then Maya appeared, and the creation became an actuality. Clay is one, consciousness is one, but when a potter creates, when Maya comes into play, we have a name for the clay. So now we have consciousness, and then Maya comes and starts producing, with the help of its good friend, Ishwara. Say, Ishwara, I need someone very smart. I have all this power, but you are the smart one. So please help me to create, numberless configurations of names and forms. And then Maya comes, and then the creation comes. The same way we have clay as one, and then a potter comes, Mr. Maya, and they start creating different shapes and giving it, attributing those shapes to different names. So what has the potter really created? The potter has not really created anything. Nothing has been actually added, but only shaped and given a name to that form. So Maya, what is Maya does? Because everything belongs to Brahman. Everything belongs to Satchitananda. Maya borrows that material, and then with the help of pure Sattva Guna, it produces this superimposition, the names in form. But it's not really a creation, because fundamentally, it's all consciousness. That's what we can resolve the whole projection of the universe into consciousness, meaning to say it's non-existent almost, although it can be experienced in this mithya order of reality. Nothing has been actually added, but a form and a name to consciousness, superimposed. The existence that was present before the creation is here now. Now, this is another important point. Before this manifestation or superimposition or reflection that occurs in the mirror of consciousness, before all of that, consciousness was one without a second. It was pure. We say pure consciousness. There was nothing. There were no names and no forms. And then there is this projection or superimposition or reflection, howsoever we want to see it. And then we see this world of names and forms. So now, before consciousness was pure and limitless, and now there is this projection of names and form that were added to consciousness. So now, how is the condition of consciousness? This existence, this free, limitless existence, was present before the creation, and is also present here now. And does it feel that this conscious existence is being somehow limited or concealed or hidden by names and forms? So it is the experience of most seekers of reality to feel that the superimposition of names and forms have hidden the clay. But anybody with a certain degree of wisdom will look at those objects made of clay and will say, okay, the fundamental nature, the only truth about these objects is clay, because the shape given to that clay does not really hide the clay. The clay is all the time showing up. It's all the time self-evident. So the same is with consciousness. Nothing has really hidden or obstructed consciousness in its free, self-evident, self-luminous nature. Just some names and forms were somehow apparently superimposed to the apparent jivas. But consciousness remains free and independent. So the existence that was present before the creation is yet here now, and it's free and independent, and it is limitless, and it's not being obscured by those names and forms, okay, that appears. It appears to be partially obscured because we tend to miss on the substantial nature of things, on the true nature of things. Anything, I mean, with the example of the hands, we see the hand, but we don't see the light. We see the words and the concepts printed in the newspaper, and we miss the paper. We see the world outside, but we don't even see the eyes that see the world. Understand? So we tend to overlook that which is self-evident, and especially because this consciousness, more or less like the eyes, cannot be directly seen by the sense organs. Now I can see my eyes because I have a mirror, and then I know the color of my eyes, and I understand. I see the words through my eyes because if I close it, I cannot see it, and then by inference, but I cannot see my eyes except with a mirror in my bathroom. So guess what? Vedanta is a mirror that's going to be present to us to help us to see this obvious, self-evident nature of ourselves, as conscious existence. So consciousness remains, but it appears to be obscured because of our interest in the names and forms, our obsession to names and forms. Now we see the world and we don't see consciousness. Why? Because the world seems to be much more juicy than consciousness. The objects of consumption that light illumines seems to be much more juicy and attractive than light itself. We take for granted this consciousness the same way we take for granted the light and the space, accommodating everything. When we look at an object, the space is permeating, pervading the objects, we miss out on the space. Why? Because my sense organs, they are designed to capture the properties of denser objects. We cannot capture through the sense organ space. Space is an intellectual object, an object of conceptualization. We infer the presence of object and we give a name to space, this space, but we don't have a sense organ to capture space, So consciousness is something that is most commonly overlooked because of its subtle nature. It's all pervasive nature that appears as if it's pervading everything, and then it's being covered by what is pervading. Ah, but there is nothing here. It's pervading space. Ah, yeah, no, I can see space, but don't ask me to try to see consciousness, because that is too much. Huh? It's too much to us. When we say that the pot or tree or table is, it shows that existence is present, apparently hidden by the name and the form. So, elimination of duality. If reality is only one non-dual consciousness existence, let's say, if reality is non-dual conscious existence, there are no difference in it. But it feels like there is a lot of difference. Because we see the world, we hear that the world is nothing but consciousness, and the world is diversity, plurality, duality, and then it appears that consciousness is colored by many differences. We have to resort to the scripture to understand, because unlike objects in the apparent reality in which difference are clearly observable, the self is not clearly observed by the mind and the sense. It's exactly what I was saying before. So the sense organs can objectify and observe all the objects, the properties, the 5 properties contained in all objects, but it cannot observe the self, because the self is not objectified by mind and sense, but it can be known. It can be known. Knowledge is the only access to understand or to see or to observe and to experience conscious existence. We can experience conscious existence, not the way we believe, not through the sense organs. The sense organs are going to be there, but the sense organs, they are not really sentient instruments. So the intellect is behind it as well. And the intellect is going to experience conscious existence, you understand, with the help of the sense organs. The sense organs cannot capture directly conscious existence, but it can capture, the names and forms and the subtlety behind names and forms, and then it can understand that what I am experiencing is actually, it's Ishwara, which is non different than consciousness, which is myself. So we can observe the self by observing the existence, which is non-dual. The existence of everything is the self of everything. So if we observe and experience things, and if we understand that everything is existence superimposed under the spell of a name and a form, or under the spell of a projection, and then we can understand that. I say, okay, so I know what I'm experiencing here. I'm experiencing Brahman, conscious existence, So we need, in order to have that, we need to have access to the scriptures. Knowledge is the only access to knowing conscious existence, non-dual. Knowledge is the only access to it, and the scripture is the means of knowledge. So we mean to say it's only through knowledge, and in order to know anything, we need a means of knowledge, as we know. We need a specific means of knowledge for every field of knowledge, and for the spiritual self-knowledge, kind of knowledge, we need a certain teaching, or means of knowledge, teaching methodology. If we want to have a doctor, we cannot go to the school of chemistry. So if you want to know the self, you want to have the proper means of knowledge to know consciousness, to know existence. Accepting that there are no difference in the self is basic. It's basic. It's called Shraddha. Accept that there are no difference in the self. In the beginning, it's hard to accept that there are no difference in the self because the mind is usually not subtle enough to understand that there are no difference in the self, because it's still confusing the self with the reflected self, which is the intellect. So there are no difference. What do you talk about? The intellect of Lin is different from mine. Of course, there are many differences in consciousness, but this is a confusion. So accept that there are no differences in consciousness in the self. It begins with a certain confidence or trust in the scriptures. This trust is necessary, but it's not a blind trust. It is a trust pending the results of my investigation, as we often say. It is necessary to have this trust in the words of the scriptures until I can put it to test. I have to put it to the test, and it takes some time. And that's why I often say that before that, we need also to have patience and humility. We need to be humble enough to accept a means of knowledge and a teacher, and we need to have patience, because give me some time. If I'm a little fast learner or slower learner, so I need more or less time, but I need time to test it. And if I'm really determined, I'm going to bring it, to put it to the test, because it's a very important knowledge. At least that is the promise of the scriptures. It's necessary to have faith in the words of the scripture until I can confirm that through my own effort of Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. So now the verse 22 presents us with the difference. The difference do not apply to the self. It applies to the superimpositions of names and forms that that they are what they are because of its difference. One thing cannot be one thing unless it can be compared to something else. If there is nothing to compare with, and then it means we are back into the non-dual nature of existence. There is nothing to be compared. Imagine consciousness, Brahman is there, and then there is something very, very small that appears within the infinite ocean of Brahman. And then again, there is Brahman by this little thing that appeared, okay? And then there is a difference. There is a part. Now I'm no longer alone here. There is this little thing that has grown up at the tip of my nose. So Brahman is like, oh my God, I was so happy to be alone here. So no, there are no difference, there are no parts. But these names and forms, they show up and then they appear to be made up of different parts, difference. And then here we say that there are three kinds of difference. There is a difference that is within an object. So we know what an object is. An object is anything that I can see, perceive, and know. It can be objectified, and then it's an object. There are three kinds of difference in an object, okay? An object can be different within itself. Within the very object, we can see, oh, there are some difference there. It is one object, but it's clearly observed as having many parts. and then we see the parts. We see, oh no, it is a tree, yes, but there are so many parts. There are flowers, branches, and leaves, and trunks, and branch, so there are so many parts. So an object can have difference within itself, different parts, which is not the case with our true nature, because our true nature does not have any difference contained within itself, because it's a partless whole, right? And then there are other kinds of difference. We say that an object can have difference between members of the same class, meaning to say, okay, oh no, it is a tree, but now this is a coconut tree and that is a mango tree. And they are different. They are still a tree. It's an object, but it is difference between two classes or two species, yeah, of the same object. This is another kind of difference. Yeah? So how does that apply to the self? Yeah? So are there two classes of conscious existence? So there is one existence, there is one consciousness. Yeah? It's one without a second. It has no parts that could say, yeah, but there are some different. And it's not different from anything else, because to be different from something else, we need to be back into duality. So we have to say, no, okay, this existence is amazing, but I have seen better ones. And then we see those things, because we end up believing that the existence of Mark is different from the existence of Mark's cat, for example, as if existence is, is covered up by, or it's inherent to that configuration of the three gunas, or that name and form. No, there is no difference, and there are no two classes as well of existence, consciousness. It's only one consciousness that lends its conscious existence to all different objects. So therefore, the difference between two kinds of trees does not apply to consciousness as a potential difference, because there are no two existence. There is only one single existence, right? Okay. The third difference is the difference between categories, the difference between a tree and the difference between a man, for example. Now we have two objects, they don't relate to another thing, one to another. So, and that as well does not relate to consciousness, because if we would say it's the difference between two categories. Okay, now you were compared within existence, and then you saw the existence, that this existence has no parts, and there is no other family member of existence that we say this is existence A and this is existence B, and And now we are going to draw a parallel there, and there are differences between a tree and a man, but there is no difference between the category of existence, which is not a category, and the category of non-existence, which would be the only other option. You understand? We could say, oh no, it's different because here we have existence and here we have non-existence. As we know, there is no such a thing as non-existence. Non-existence encompasses, it includes existence, because existence has to be present, because existence is always present. I mean, we take again the deep sleep state in which it appears that we run out of existence. But then when we observe, we're going to come to the conclusion that I run out of conscious mind. My conscious mind went to rest, went to sleep, was suppressed by tamas, but my existence was present. I even have a nice, pleasant experience as a pranya jiva, you understand? So existence is always present. And if anybody trying to deny the existence of existence is really getting himself or herself in great trouble, because you need to be existent to determine the non-existence. You understand? So the people come with these ideas because of samadhi, nirvikalpa samadhi. They believe that there is a state of non-existence, which means to say a state of no mind. But the self is not the mind. Existence is not the mind. You can lose the mind, but you never lose existence, because nothing escapes conscious existence. Everything exists within conscious existence, right? Therefore, the difference between the category of existence and non-existence is absurd. There is only one category, which is existence. And then none of this applies to the self. That's what we want to understand. The verse 23rd. The doubt may arise that the self, the one and only reality, may also have difference. But all difference in the three worlds, gross, subtle, and causal, are dismissed by the Upanishads in the words, all this is the non-dual self. So again, it's hard to really accept, this knowledge or this notion presented by the Upanishads, that the only reality is the self and nothing else is really real. And that self has no difference, and all difference belongs to the mirage. So it's different. But all this difference that I'm calling the mirage, produced by Maya and Ishwaris, are clearly dismissed by the Upanishads, using the words, all this is only the non-dual conscious existence. All of this is only consciousness. But how can someone believe it? It's impossible to take it. It's impossible to take it. I remember 20, 30 years ago, I was always intrigued with this notion that the tree does not exist because everything here is a projection or illusion. And I was really trying to, well, how can it be an illusion? How can it be just a projection? How can it not exist? And so on. It's like a dream. So unless we have a complete body of teachings that go step by step unfolding all this support, this logical support to these statements, nobody is going to buy into this. All this is the non-dual consciousness existence. There are no difference here. The difference are only an appearance. So it's hard to take. The mind assumes difference with reference to consciousness because it is conditioned by the three kinds of difference in the world of objects. The mind is made out of the elements. The mind is made out of the subtle elements. And the mind assumes difference and superimposes the difference on consciousness. Once it begins looking for consciousness, it superimposes its own divisions and difference on consciousness, because the mind is conditioned by three kinds of difference. Those three kinds that we have seen, different parts within the mind. The mind has feelings, memory, and organs of actions. The mind has all of that, the intellectual, the emotions. So the mind has parts. They say, okay, no, I mean, how can I be partless? Yeah? So the mind, it has a difficult time to accept that. It assumes different because it is conditioned by the three kinds of difference. Difference within my mind, difference between my mind and the mind of Mark, and difference between my mind and the mind of another creature which is not a human being. So all these difference, they apply to the mind. Therefore, the mind assumes difference because it's conditioned by these three kinds of difference that are inherent to all objects. The text says that difference do not apply to consciousness. It negates the three types of difference with reference to consciousness with the three words. One, econ, negates the difference within an object. All this is one non-dual consciousness. It negates all difference with the word oneness or non-dual. It negates the difference within an object. So this is very nice. So with the concept of oneness, it negates the difference that would be possible within an object, like a tree have different parts. It says one. It negates. Because the self is formless, there are no objects in it. It's formless, the self. Okay, there are no shapes. Therefore, there are no objects. Therefore, it's not made of parts. Something that is formless cannot be made out of parts. So there are no parts within the self. It's one, it has no parts because it's formless. And the words only, all this is the non-dual self only. The word only even negates the difference between members of the same class. So all there is consciousness alone. I like this word, alone, only, So there are no difference between members of the same part. There are no two consciousness. Non-dual, Advaitam, negates the difference between consciousness and some other category. The other category, as I said before, could be unconsciousness or non-existence, existence and non-existence. Here it says like non-dual, Advaitam, negates any difference, no division, no difference between conscious existence and some other category. But as we know, there are no other category because there's no such a thing as non-existence. So verse 24. One cannot doubt that consciousness itself, the one and the only reality, has no parts. As creation is only the appearance of names and forms, parts cannot exist before creation. So when creation comes into place, nothing was really added to consciousness. The same way when the potter added a shape, a form, and then attribute a name and a property, a usage to a certain object out of clay. When he did that, he did not create anything. What did the potter do? It just superimposed a name, a form and a name which serves certain purpose. You understand? So he just did something which was a superimposition of different ornaments of gold that remains fundamentally as gold and gold alone, non-dual gold. One cannot doubt that awareness, the self, is one and the only reality, and it has no parts. As creation is only the appearance of names and forms, parts cannot exist before the creation. So before the creation, parts, which is the superimposition of names and forms, cannot exists before the creation, and how about after the creation? Huh? After the creation, it appears to exist. Huh? The self is one reality, but now it appears to be covered by names and forms, okay? And among those superimpositions, there is also a superimposition of emptiness, which is nothing but space. No? So all of that are names and forms. Although space is formless. No? That's why it's so similar to consciousness, with a fundamental difference that consciousness is, and space is not self-conscious. No? Because consciousness is beyond perception, there is no evidence that it has parts. So consciousness is not captured by perception, sensory perception. It's beyond perception. Therefore, there is no way that we can tell that consciousness has some parts. I mean, the mind, we can, when we get smarter and we come to Vedanta, and then we begin to understand that the mind is a complex organism with different functions or parts. You know, it's a subtle object. Huh? But consciousness being totally beyond perception and inference, so we can observe that the mind has certain functions and parts, but we observe it intellectually with the help of the scriptures. But consciousness, we need even more help of the scriptures, huh? Because you see a lot of people in the spiritual world come to the point to begin objectifying and observing the mind and its fluctuations and its different conditions and parts and functions and ways to react and so on. So people in the spiritual world, they are much more easily familiarized or interested in the mind, because the mind is much more tangible. Right? But awareness is totally beyond perception and even beyond the intellect in terms of being objectified. No? The intellect can objectify the functions of the mind, but the intellect cannot really clearly objectify, because consciousness is beyond perception. Therefore, there is no evidence that it has any functions or parts or characteristics or attributes or anything that does not belong to consciousness. A carpenter does not produce the wood, but only shapes the wood. The potter does not produce the cup of argilla, but only shapes the argilla. Yeah? So creation is only consciousness plus names and forms. And names and forms is the contribution of Maya. And Maya is the greatest illusionist. The names and forms are not parts of consciousness, as we know. The names and forms are just names and forms, which belongs to Mithya, this apparent order of reality. Therefore, names and forms are not parts of consciousness. They are added afterwards by Maya. They were added after Maya created them. So Maya created the names and forms. So it's a superimposition, which is a projection created by this power of Maya. Okay. So we better stop here. I'm going to make a again, I apologize for whosoever is not here today, and I will make a note in my email and make sure that I don't mess things up for next week anymore. So Monday next week, Europe is going to change to 7 p.m. as we have agreed upon, and I was almost trying to contact Claudio to clear this doubt, But then I looked at the previous email and I said, okay, that's what we did last time, and then that's what we're going to do now. But no, we have decided that that was the last one, and now we are going to change. So next week, next Monday, we do Europe, beginning at 7 p.m. Huh? And then everybody else remains in the same time. Is that the case? Because Lynn, you are today, you are in a different time from before, huh? Or no? Oh no, you would be in a different time when we do it 7 p.m. in Europe, right? Yeah. You see, time, I mean, time and space is very complex, very difficult to understand. And Lynn wants to understand time. Oh, good luck. Okay. Okay, we have Elizabeth. She became very subtle today. She's invisible. We can't even hear her anymore. She became like space. She went into Samadhi now. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, my friends. Namaste. Thank you very much. And we meet again soon. Next time. Goodbye. Arrivederci. Where is Claudio?
Okay, thanks, Arlindo.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Bye-bye.